Okay, so let's dive into this. There's been so much buzz, right, about Apple and AI.
Oh, absolutely. For a while now, big plans, Apple Intelligence, this whole new Siri they promised.
Exactly. But then you also hear about the delays.
Oh.
What's really happening there?
And you've got competitors, OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, they jumped in early, made a big splash. Apple's approach, though,
Mm.
it's always been different.
Tim Cook's mantra.
That's the one. Not first, but best. Forward.
First, but best.
Okay. But when the dates keep slipping, what does best really mean in practice? Or like when?
Hmm. That's the core question, isn't it? And that's exactly what we're digging into today. We've gathered a whole stack of sources, news reports, industry analysis, even some interesting forum discussions
Right.
to really unpack what's going on behind the curtain with Apple's AI strategy, especially with Apple Intelligence and that big Siri overhaul.
So the mission here is to pull out the key details.
Yeah.
Give everyone listening a clearer picture of the challenges, where things stand right now. Exactly. We want to understand if this not first but best thing is working out, or if maybe, just maybe, they're losing ground because AI moves so incredibly fast.
Okay, so let's start right there. That core philosophy. What do the sources say about not first, but best?
Well, the material definitely confirms that's the official line. Tim Cook's been clear about it. He acknowledged, that Google and OpenAI were way earlier with their AI stuff.
And the reason for taking longer, what's the justification?
Cook's argument, as reported, is basically that it just takes a while to get it really great. That's the quote. The idea is that Apple's success hasn't really come from being the absolute pioneer. It's more about refining things, integrating them perfectly, making the user experience, seamless.
Like the iPod or the iPhone?
Precisely. He points to those examples.
Mm.
iPod, iPhone, AirPods, none were first. But Apple arguably made them mainstream, popular, because they nailed the execution over time.
Okay, that makes sense on paper. It's a strong track record. But the sources we looked at also suggest this getting it great is taking, well, a lot longer than they thought.
That's definitely the picture emerging.
So what does the reporting tell us about the actual timeline? Where did it start?
The initial expectations, based on what people were reporting early on, seemed pretty optimistic. A lot of the core Apple Intelligence features, the AI-powered stuff, were kind of expected alongside the iPhone 16.
Which would have been fall 2024?
Fall 2024, yeah.
Yeah.
That seemed to be the baseline hope or expectation.
Okay. So when did we first hear that timeline might be optimistic?
The first big public signal was back in March 2025. Apple actually announced a delay then.
Ah.
And yeah, that was definitely disappointing for people who had maybe bought the newer iPhones thinking these features were just around the corner.
Understandable. So after that March announcement, where did the target date shift to?
Well, that's when things started getting a bit fuzzy in the reports. It became kind of a moving target. We saw some sources mentioning maybe spring 2025,
Okay.
perhaps tied to an iOS update like 18.4. But then even that seemed to slide. Later reports were suggesting, maybe May 2025, possibly with iOS 18.5.
So spring, maybe early summer 2025. And what's the absolute latest timeline according to these reports? Where are we now?
This is where it gets, well, significant. The most recent reports, especially from reliable sources like Bloomberg, indicate a much bigger shift.
Oh.
The really personalized advanced Siri features, the ones everyone's excited about, are now reportedly targeting spring 2026.
Wait, spring 2026?
Spring 2026.
Oh,
Possibly landing with something like an iOS 26.4 update. We're talking a potential jump from an initial fall 2024 hope all the way to spring 2026 for some of the key stuff.
wow. That's a substantial delay, almost a year and a half past those early expectations.
Yeah.
How are Apple executives explaining this publicly?
Well, top execs like Craig Federighi and Greg Joswiak, they have acknowledged needing more time. The public statements cited basically say the update is coming in the coming year. Vague phrasing, right?
Right.
But they've explicitly said they needed more time for quality to, quote, get it right, which, ties back to that not first but best idea.
But the time frame for getting it right has clearly stretched out a lot.
Massively, yeah.
And did these earlier hiccups, these missed internal deadlines maybe, influence how they approached WWDC this year in 2025?
The sources definitely suggest so. The reporting notes that Apple was noticeably more cautious at WWDC 2025. They held back on previewing a lot of future features compared to past years.
Trying not to overpromise.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
It's seen as a direct reaction to the criticism they got when they announced the big Siri revamp. hyped it up, and they had to delay it past the iPhone 16 launch. So now it looks like they're trying to manage expectations better.
Yeah.
Don't show it if it's not almost ready.
That makes strategic sense, I suppose, given the circumstances. But why? Why all these repeated delays? What are the big hurdles, technically or internally, that the sources point to?
The reports really highlight some pretty deep technical issues. A major one seems to be the actual architecture they were trying to build.
How so?
It's described in some reports as a problematic hybrid system, basically trying to merge the old existing Siri code, the legacy stuff, with all the powerful new AI features they want to introduce.
So, like, bolting a jet engine onto an old car chassis? That sounds difficult.
It sounds like it proved really difficult, extremely difficult. The sources mentioned significant instability during testing. One report even cited a, frankly, shocking error rate,
Ugh, how bad.
around
The
33%.
third, 1 out of every 3 tries just failed.
Apparently during testing. Think about that.
Mm.
For Apple, whose whole brand is built on things just working smoothly, a 33% error rate in testing. That just screams deep technical trouble.
Yikes. That's the opposite of best.
Definitely not best. It shows how tough this integration really was.
Okay, so major technical knots to untangle. Were there other things going on, like internal factors, people issues?
Yes, the material points that way too. Reports suggest there was internal friction, tension, particularly between, say, the AI engineering teams who were building it and maybe the marketing groups.
Over deadlines, expectations.
Likely stemming from exactly that. Missed deadlines, disagreements about what was actually possible within certain timeframes. Big, complex projects often have that kind of internal strain. Apple's AI push wasn't immune, it seems.
And didn't we also see some leadership changes related to Siri and AI?
That's also been reported, yes. John Gianandrea, who is overseeing Siri, has reportedly stepped back a bit from the day-to-day of the redevelopment.
Okay.
Responsibility for that core Siri revamp is said to have shifted more towards Mike Rockwell and Craig Federighi. Moves like that often suggest, that the challenges were significant enough to need a fresh approach or different oversight.
Right. A leadership shuffle can signal they're really trying to get a handle on things. So, okay, it's a mix of technical debt, maybe some internal growing pains, leadership adjustments. That explains pushing dates back so far.
It paints a pretty clear picture of why things slowed down.
But despite all these hurdles, what are they actually aiming for? What's the end goal here? What are these promised features of Apple Intelligence and the new Siri supposed to do?
The core things mentioned across the board are, first, a much, much better Siri. That's the big one. Then, more advanced AI-powered text editing, and also new features for creating images.
Okay, let's focus on Siri. What's the big leap they're trying to make there? What makes the new Siri different?
The main goal is to make Siri way more context-aware and capable. The vision described is Siri being able to actually understand what's on your screen at any moment.
Oh, interesting.
And even use your personal data privately, they stress, on the device to understand requests with much, much deeper context. It's meant to handle complex commands, multi-step things that the current Siri it just chokes on them.
So not just set a timer, but understanding context from an email or a message and then doing multiple things.
Exactly. Like you could potentially say something like, hey Siri, find the flight info in that email Jen sent last week and add the arrival time to my calendar. That kind of chain command.
Okay, that would be a huge improvement.
It would be massive. The tech underneath is based on large language models, LLMs, but the sources really emphasize that integration challenge again.
Getting the new brain to talk to the old system.
And all your apps, yeah. Getting that powerful AI model to work smoothly with everything else. To help with that, they're reportedly building out a new system called App Intents.
App Intents.
Yeah, the idea is to give Siri much more detailed control over functions inside your apps across all your Apple devices, so it can actually do more complex things for you within apps.
Got it. Are there any other sort of related AI projects bubbling up inside Apple that the sources mention?
Yes, a couple other internal initiatives are noted. One is a potential standalone chatbot focused on knowledge retrieval.
Like a separate app?
Possibly. Internally, it's apparently gone by different code names: Ajax, Ask. Sometimes people apparently call it Apple GPT informally. The idea is a chatbot that can go out and pull information from the web, answer questions.
Would Apple actually launch that as its own app, though? Compete directly with ChatGPT or Google's Gemini?
That seems to be a point of internal debate, according to the sources. Greg Joswiak, a senior VP, is reportedly not keen on a separate chatbot app. He seems to prefer keeping all the AI smarts integrated into the existing system, like iOS and Siri.
Keep it seamless, Apple-like.
Exactly. This knowledge project, by the way, is reportedly being led by Robbie Walker.
Okay. Interesting internal dynamics there. What about this other thing mentioned, Siri Copilot? That sounds ambitious.
It really does. The sources describe that as an initiative aiming for something more like a proactive, always-on digital assistant running in the background.
Like anticipating your needs.
Sort of. The idea is it could provide real-time updates, maybe suggest actions you might want to take without you even asking, potentially even perform some tasks autonomously.
Wow.
One source compared it to the kind of ambient assistance you see with the Workout Buddy feature in watchOS 26, just maybe broader.
Okay, those features definitely sound like the kind of upgrade Siri users have been wanting for ages. A long time.
No kidding.
But given the delays, the technical nightmares described, how much doubt is there? How skeptical are people that Apple can actually pull this off, especially by 2026?
There's a lot of skepticism reflected in the sources,
Huh.
especially when you look at the commentary, like on Reddit threads discussing these reports.
Yeah.
And that reported description of internal development being chaotic
Yeah.
doesn't exactly build confidence, does it?
Not really. What's the general feeling you see in those comments?
A very common sentiment is basically, I'll believe it when I see it. There's just this long history with Siri, you know?
The feeling that it's always been playing catch up.
Exactly. People explicitly bring that up. They compare Siri now unfavorably to Google Assistant from years ago, like 2017.
Yeah.
Some comments were even like, my Ford Sync system is smarter than Siri. Yeah. So the feeling is, if Siri has lagged for this long, how realistic is it that Apple can suddenly leapfrog not just to where ChatGPT is now, but where everyone else will be by 2026? There's significant doubt.
That history really casts a long shadow, doesn't it? What about the technical side again, specifically Apple's big push for on-device AI? Is there skepticism there too?
Oh, definitely. That's
Yeah.
another major theme in the commentary. Apple really wants to run as much AI locally on your iPhone or Mac as possible. For privacy, for speed, that's the pitch.
Right.
But a lot of observers, commenters, they question whether a truly powerful LLM, one that can do all these amazing context-aware things, can actually run well on a standard iPhone.
Because of hardware limits.
Like RAM.
Exactly like RAM. People point out that, say, 8 GB of RAM, which is common in many iPhones, is considered pretty small for running these huge AI models effectively.
So they doubt the hardware can actually handle the advanced AI Apple is promising, at least locally? Yes. There was one specific comment saying that trying to run existing open source models like DeepSeek on an iPhone right now is just terrible, implying the performance isn't there. Now, Apple is famous for optimizing software for its hardware, squeezing out performance. But the skepticism is whether even Apple can make these really big, complex language models run smoothly and efficiently on current or near-future iPhones without, draining the battery instantly or making everything else lag.
It's a valid concern. And it's kind of ironic, isn't it? While they're struggling to build their own powerful on-device AI, the sources also say Apple is currently using other companies' AI.
Right. It underscores the challenge. One report confirms Apple is apparently using ChatGPT itself for some internal stuff or maybe some background processing.
Really?
And they're also reported to be talking to other AI companies, like Perplexity, possibly about integrating their tech for things like better web search results in Siri or Safari.
So they're leaning on external help while building their own. It shows just how monumental this task is, even for Apple with all its resources.
Absolutely. Building a cutting-edge competitive LLM from scratch is just incredibly hard.
So with all this going on, the delayers, the skepticism, is it actually hurting iPhone sales today? Are people holding off buying because the AI isn't there yet?
Interestingly, maybe not significantly, at least not yet, one source mentioned a CNET survey.
Yeah.
And in that survey, only about 11% of people said AI features were a major factor in their decision to upgrade their phone right now.
Only 11%.
Huh. So that might give Apple a little breathing room, sales-wise, in the immediate term. But you have to assume the pressure to deliver eventually is building, especially as competitors keep pushing their AI features forward.
Right. The clock is ticking, even if consumers aren't totally focused on it yet.
And it's worth just briefly mentioning the wider AI world that Apple is operating in, which some sources touched on. The whole field is racing ahead towards more autonomous AI agents, AI that can do things for you, towards AI with better sort of emotional intelligence or understanding, multimodal stuff, combining text, voice, images, and critically, everyone is trying to crack that on-device processing nut.
Why the big push for on-device?
Privacy, speed, and also cost. Running these generative AI queries in the cloud constantly costs a lot of money per query. Doing it locally saves that cost, makes it faster, and keeps user data more private. So Apple's facing fierce competition on all these fronts.
Okay, so let's bring this all together for someone listening right now. If you're an Apple user, maybe you got a new iPhone 16 or
Yeah.
17 recently. What does all this mean for you?
Well, it means patience is required, a lot more patience than maybe you initially thought. The wait for those really advanced, game-changing AI features, especially the Siri revamp, is likely going to be significantly longer.
We're talking potentially spring 2026 now for key parts.
Exactly. And understanding why helps make sense of it. It's not just arbitrary. These delays, based on the reports, stem from really complex technical problems trying to integrate powerful new AI with older systems and also the internal adjustments needed for such a huge project.
It really brings us back to that fundamental question, doesn't it? Is Apple's strategy wait, polish be the best, even if it means arriving in spring 2026 the right move?
Right. Or does waiting that long in a field that's evolving daily risk them falling even further behind what competitors already offer, or what they'll offer by 2026?
It's a huge gamble, potentially.
And knowing about these technical hurdles, like the challenge of merging LLMs with older code, or the very real difficulty of running powerful AI efficiently on current phone hardware, plus the internal reorganizations, it helps explain the shifting timelines. It shows that delivering truly advanced, deeply integrated AI across millions of devices is just an immense engineering lift, clearly taking Apple longer than they hoped.
This has been really insightful. So just to wrap the core story, the sources make it clear Apple's big AI upgrade, the smarter Siri, the Apple Intelligence features, it's facing serious delays.
Yep, with some key features now reportedly not expected until spring 2026.
And this is happening because they're wrestling with tough technical integration challenges, making internal adjustments, all while sticking to that not first but best philosophy, trying to deliver something polished and deeply woven into the Apple experience.
That's the gist of it. And maybe the final thought to leave you with, think about these sources in the bigger picture. Apple is aiming to get this really great maybe by 2026, but the AI world outside Cupertino isn't waiting. The sources on general AI trends show it's evolving incredibly fast right now. New models, smarter capabilities, AI agents doing more complex tasks autonomously. That's all happening constantly.
So the question becomes,
Will Apple's eventual offering, landing perhaps almost 2 years after some early hopes, still feel like the undisputed best compared to what everyone else has achieved by then? That's the critical question to ponder as we keep watching this unfold.
it absolutely is something to definitely keep an eye on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. If you found this analysis helpful, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and definitely activate that notification bell so you don't miss our next analysis.
Yeah, we really appreciate you tuning in.
Goodbye for now, and we look forward to exploring the next topic with you.